Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Poland, I'm delighted to welcome you all to this ceremony of awarding the Lech Walesa Solidarity Prize. Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored today by the presence of distinguished guests, so please join me in welcoming Deputy Prime Minister, Minister for Foreign Affairs, Radosław Sikorski, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Irma Santos de Mas, the prominent figure of the Cuban American Society in Florida. Ladies and gentlemen, what a fine moment. We gather today out of gratitude and in a sense of responsibility. If it weren't for the steadfast policies and historic support and leadership of US President Ronald Reagan, if it wasn't for the moral support and guidance of Polish Pope John Paul II, and the courageous stance of once anonymous Polish worker Lech Walesa, the Polish society would not have gained independence, would not have achieved a peaceful regime change in 1989. Poles are acutely aware of the high cost of liberty. After 44 years of communism and Soviet dominance, at the end of the 20th century, we were offered a chance of peace and a chance that we took. We stood free, finally, at last. We embraced that chance while keeping in mind the moral call of John Paul II. Be not afraid, and with liberty comes responsibility. It is in this very spirit that the Deputy Prime Minister, at that time, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Radosław Sikorski, established this very prize, the Solidarity Prize, in 2014. Let me quote shortly one of the most outstanding leaders in the US history, Ronald Reagan. For make no mistake, in a world where so many are hostile to freedom, where millions live in poverty and oppression, those few nations that share the right of liberty must stand together. For together, we can pierce the darkness and shed our light over all the earth. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege now to invite to the stage Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Poland, Radosław Sikorski.
Dear Chairman of the Chapter, Secretary of State, Excellencies, distinguished guests. 45 years ago, the workers of the Lenin shipyard in Gdańsk did something extraordinary. They went on strike not only to demand the rise in wages, but to demand a representation. They said to the Communist Party, despite your ideology, you do not represent us. What we need in Communist Poland is a free and independent trade union. And as a result of the strike at the Lenin shipyard and all over Poland, they got that. And the leader of that strike was Lech Walesa, a world historical figure who happens to be in the United States right now. We have with us his son representing his father. And Lech Walesa has become a symbol of non-violent and successful struggle for liberty. Struggle for freedom, democracy, and liberation from communist oppression that was imposed by the Soviet Union on Poland and other European countries at the end of World War II. Solidarity, the word of the name of the trade union, and a word that we hold holy in Poland. The mass protest movement, founded in 1980, survived despite the imposition of martial law a year later, and other repressions, eventually leading to democratic elections and a peaceful transfer of power. Events in Poland triggered a virtuous domino and were followed by the fall of the Berlin Wall, the fall of the Iron Curtain, and then the fall of the Soviet Union itself. Lech Walesa was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1983. He was awarded it as an appreciation of what he had already done, but also as a sign of encouragement and a means of supporting his struggle for liberty. Thank God he was not alone. Friends around the world lent us Poles a helping hand on our path to democracy. After martial law was imposed, President Ronald Reagan, already mentioned deservedly, showed his solidarity with us by lighting a candle in the window of the White House on Christmas Eve 1981 and encouraged Americans to do the same. January 30th, 19 Solidarity Day with Poland. We remember it very well and appreciate it. The Polish democratic opposition received not only spiritual, but also material hope, support from the United States. And I believe this was money very well invested. We made good use of this assistance, and that's why we are today in a position to help others. As already mentioned, established in 2014, the Lech Walesa Solidarity Prize, $1 million zlotys, which is around $300,000 today, is an award for outstanding achievements in defending democracy, human rights, and civil liberties. Its past laureates include Mustafa Dżemilev, the leader of the Crimean Tatars, Zhanna Nemtsova, a journalist and activist, daughter of the Russian dissident Boris Nemtsov, assassinated in the vicinity of the Kremlin. And just recently, Pavel Latushka, a Belarusian dissident and pro-democracy advocate. Today, it is my privilege and honor to present this award to an extraordinary person whose courage, resilience, and dedication have made her a symbol of freedom and dignity in Cuba and beyond. Berta Soler Fernandez. There are actually some striking parallels between the life and struggles of today's laureate with that of Lech Walesa. Berta Soler could not come to receive the award, just like Lech Walesa couldn't go to receive his Nobel Peace Prize. For the same reason, actually. Both of them could not be sure to be allowed to go back home. Devotion to their homeland is a fundamental value for both of them. Berta Soler's attitude, like Walesa, is unwavering, systematic, and peaceful. She joined protests against the 2003 imprisonment of over 70 Cubans arrested for so-called counter-revolutionary activities. Berta's husband, Angel Moya Acosta, was one of them. Together with the wives and mothers of other detainees, she protested by praying for them during Sunday masses and then, dressed in white, marching along Havana's Fifth Avenue. Lech Walesa also drew his strength from faith, which he saw as a moral guidepost. Thanks to Ladies in White's tenacity as well as international support, the last prisoners arrested in 2003 were released in 2011. Many were forced to emigrate. Berta and Angel remained in Cuba. They have carried on despite repressions. There is at least one more similarity between these two unique figures, Soler and Walesa. They are extraordinary, yet ordinary people, regular folks who took on an exceptionally heavy burden and did not buckle under the weight, who became political because their countries were not free. By honoring Berta Soler with the Lech Walesa Solidarity Award, we pay tribute to her, to ladies in white, and to all Cubans on the island and beyond who are demanding the rights to have a say in the future of their homeland. Many of them now live here in Miami. They have not forgotten their roots, no matter when their families left Cuba, or how successful they have become in the US. The presence of Secretary of State Marco Rubio, the son of Cuban immigrants and now a high official in this country, is yet another proof that the fight for freedom never ends. Marco, thank you very much for joining us.
First of all, thank you very much. Thank you for doing this here. I was telling the foreign minister, who I have met now, I've been there like 8 months. I've seen you like 12 times. So we see each other, well, never in the States, but around the world. I was explaining a little bit about the historic nature of this hotel. This is a very young city, relatively speaking. So I said, this is an old hotel by our standards, not by Polish standards or European standards. But it's also a place that over the years has hosted many events such as this, events geared towards the cause of freedom and liberty around the world. I've come here to many different events that have been about freedom and liberty, but obviously especially about Cuba. And I say about the age of the hotel because it's hard to believe, as you were walking through the examples of Lech Walesa and the Polish experience, that communism is still a scourge, that it's still, despite its failure everywhere it's been tried, despite not just its economic failure, but its social failure, its destructive influence that it has on every society it's ever touched, it still remains a presence in different pockets of the world. And for those of us who live in this community and who have been raised in this community, just 90 miles from our shores. Now, what I'm about to say is not a criticism of anybody. I have never lived in an oppressive regime. Some of you have, but many of us have never lived or been the target of political oppression at the level that is faced in Cuba. And so I don't mean this as a criticism to anyone, but frankly, many times the moment comes where it's just easier to leave. It's easier to leave the country. Sometimes you're forced to do so by force. Other times you travel abroad and are allowed to return. What has always struck me about Berta Soler and those who join her is that she has refused to leave. Again, this is not a criticism of those who have left, because it's perfectly understandable that there comes a moment where perhaps you can be more successful and more effective from the outside than you are from the inside. But her refusal to leave, her refusal to continue to live under the conditions that she lives under, which are incredibly oppressive, that deny her the basic rights, including the right to go to church every Sunday, is a source of incredible admiration for all of us. It's something we should all deeply admire and appreciate. She is, despite, I think those of us who are involved in the cause of freedom and liberty know exactly who she is and what she's been about. I think more people need to know about what she's done, about how inspirational she is. You said something in your comments was exactly right. This was not a political person. Frankly, political activism in Cuba is not something that's encouraged or rewarded unless you're active on behalf of the regime and their so-called fake revolution. Her willingness to step forward because she identified and saw oppression, she saw wrongdoing, and was willing not just to raise her voice to criticize it, but to actually take action against it in a peaceful way, has defined the rest of her life and imposed on her a tremendous cost for those and for those around her. Now, I do think that part of today's credit needs to go to so many who have supported her in this endeavor. And we're so grateful for your support to her now. And not just the prize that comes with it, which will certainly be put to good use, but just saying the name and telling the story in front of these cameras, in front of this audience, and in a way hopefully be noticed by more, is an incredible sign to so many that of what she's done and how special it truly is. Freedom is not actually a natural human instinct. If you think and you study history, almost the entirety of human history has been defined by oppression. Few people up until just a couple hundred years ago even had a choice on who governed them. So if you look at the course of human history, freedom as we understand it, the freedom of speech, the freedom of expression, the freedom of religion, all these freedoms that I think we take for granted on a daily basis in our own lives are really not the norm. They've been the exception. Now, what it tells you is that it lives in the human spirit, but has not been a part of the human behavior. And it's only in the last 200 to 300 years, this very sort of new notion of rights that come from your creator, from God. Rights that governments that actually work for the people, not the people that work for the government. The right to actually be able to have a voice and choose who governs over you. All these are incredibly new concepts. And what is true about human nature is that they are constantly being challenged. Over and over again, all over the world, time and again, we see that even when you make progress in democracy and in freedom, they have to be sustained and they have to endure. Where we draw our inspiration to do that is from people like Berta Soler, who have confronted it. Look, again, I'm not being critical of anybody, but it is easier to be critical of a regime, like many of us are, on social media and in press releases. It's a lot harder to actually confront it in person with real consequences in your daily life. And so we're here today to honor for what she's done and what she continues to do. In so many ways, this is not just a plaque, this is an award that will go towards being able to continue to carry that out. And we are so grateful and honored that you were willing to do that here in South Florida with so many in this community who know this issue so well, have lived it. In many cases, just looking around at some of the faces, there are people here today who have also faced down this regime, who have also faced down oppression in Cuba or in their homelands, and are living testaments to that level of bravery and courage. So thank you for scheduling this here, for making it possible for me to be a part of it. I'm honored to be a part of it. We're grateful. I want to say one more point, and it's important. Your government in Poland has been an extraordinary ally in the cause of liberty and freedom. There are other countries that were liberated from the yoke of tyranny and can be helpful from time to time, but there is none in the world that's been more helpful, more steadfast, and more aligned with us, including in Cuba, than the government of Poland. And so we are grateful. I don't want to get anybody in trouble. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but we had a conversation just a few months ago about some events going on in Cuba. And I had asked for a favor. I'd asked the Polish government to help us with a few things globally and internationally. And it happened instantly and immediately. And it shows you that of all the nations in the world who have overcome the tyranny of communism, the one that most certainly hasn't forgotten what it took to overcome it and have raised their voice and taken action to be supportive of those who seek to overcome it is our allies and friends in Poland. So thank you. We're very grateful to all of you. And thank you all for being a part of this today. Thank you.
The Phoenician Scheme is Wes Anderson's best film since The Grand Budapest Hotel.
Help yourself to a hand grenade.
And the 4-star comedy event of the summer.
In fact, there's even more.
You're very kind. You're very kind.